Hello. I don't know how long I just sat there silent for. I'm sorry. That's a little bit weird. For those of you who are asking, Emily Canders is works for Dutton in the publicity and marketing department. We're so grateful to them for doing all of this tonight. Hi, welcome. It's a beautifully foolish endeavor. That's both the name of the show and the name of Hank's book that comes out today. Obviously, we wish we were with all of you in person, that there were some fantastical place where we could all be together, some sort of Nerdfighteria island. But in lieu of that, we are here virtually, and we're so excited to be here. So this show is going to begin today a little bit unusually. Usually it's me and Hank and we talk, and we will do that. But we have a few special guests tonight, and we wanted to start with one of them talking to you about an experience that I think if we understand it better, it will help underscore the some of the themes in A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor. And by the way, before we start, I just want to remind everybody that this is going to be a spoiler-free evening. So we thank you in advance for not posting any spoilers and comments. And this will I will do my best not to reveal any spoilers. And I know that our first guest this evening will also do their best not to reveal any spoilers. But with all that noted, it's my honor and also my responsibility to introduce you to Left Shark.
Hello, I was muted. I'm rather new to Zoom. I'm a meme. Hello, John.
Hi, Left Shark.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to see you. We haven't gotten to hang out that much in person. I'll tell you, speaking of being new to Zoom, I'm also rather new to Zoom, and I'm gonna go ahead and
I think you just clicked a button that turns off your video.
Great. I'm gonna say goodbye for now, Left Shark, and
all right,
encourage you to enjoy your audience.
All right, I'll see you in the green room. Hello, everyone. My name's Left Shark, and I wanted to give you a PowerPoint presentation today. I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much to Hank Green for inviting me over to his home, where I'm now sitting at his desk. He'll be on later to continue his part of the show. But in the meantime, everybody get ready for my PowerPoint. I'm going to click that button, and then it's not easy for me to do this. I'm not really set up for PowerPoint as an institution. What with the flippers? You're wondering, why don't you ever see a Left Shark tweet? Flippers, that's why. All right, everybody, thank you for coming out to the show. It's a real pleasure to be here. So I wanted to let you know, my name is Left Shark. If you know me from Katy Perry's halftime show in 2015. But in fact, I would like to posit that not only did you not know me until that day, I didn't even really exist before then. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not Brian Gaw. Brian Gaw was the dude who danced around in a shark suit at the 2015 Katy Perry halftime show. He's a stylist in Hollywood now. That's not who I am. I am something else. I am Left Shark. I'm the meme. I'm the thing that was created, not by one person, but by every person who participated in Left Shark Discourse back in February 1st of 2015, and also on every day since then. Basically, I did not exist until the moment when I was famous, and I only exist because I am famous. I am the collectively shared idea of Left Shark that many people share. The far more spectacular element of that halftime show, and the far more originally discussed element, was a giant faceted golden lion that Miss Perry rode on the back of. But that lion, look, she's got a broom up the back of her for safety. But that lion no longer exists because no one remembers it. But because of the internet, I get to still exist. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Many of you do not even know who I am. And that is the nature of fame in the 21st century. It is so fractured that many people are thinking, oh my gosh, I finally get to hear from Left Shark, while other people are saying, what the heck is that? Well, let me tell you about it. The Super Bowl is the most important sports game in America. It happens once every year. At least that's the idea. And traditionally, a halftime show happens at the middle during like halfway through the game. That's why they call it that. And it's very big and fancy and well produced and mostly designed to be watched on television. Katy Perry's halftime show was widely appreciated and the reviews were good, but nothing in it was as memorable for some reason as me. Through a combination of iconic costume design and unexpected dance moves, I stuck in people's minds, and the internet did its thing, and suddenly I began to exist. I want to be clear, I was not created by any single person. I was created collectively, a kind of spell cast by a culture to form a living, existing thing. The costume and the dancer, they were just the husks that the spell breathed life into, and that life became me. I'm a shark who has never been in water, but I am forever on some people's skin. I will be remembered for longer than many human people will be alive. And even if no one is really sure why they remember me, or particularly happy that they do, I will remain in their minds. But I'm not unique in the fact that I exist as a collection of ideas that people have in their heads. That is also true of, I'm going to get rid of this slide because I'm not sure what that middle body part even is. There are other things that this is true of, like laws and money and the idea of America and the value of a human life. It's also true of how we understand each other, not just famous people with our necessarily and by design simplistic view of who they are, but also ourselves and those people that we love and who are close to us. Shakespeare said, there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And Rene Descartes, we all know what he said. He said, I think, therefore I am. I'm going to add one thing by mashing these two up, a little bit of wisdom from your friend Left Shark. Nothing is real, but thinking makes it so. I'm not sure if you came to the Left Shark talk to hear about Cartesian philosophy and Shakespeare quotes, but hey, it's where we ended up. I was created by social media entirely. I was not meant to exist, but thinking made me so. I don't think that could have been intentionally done. Part of the excitement around memifying me into existence was that I was not meant to be the star of that halftime show. But other things can be intentionally created. And the things that are created are not just a function of the people doing the creations, but the interests and algorithms of the platforms on which we create, and also the interests of the powerful in a society. If what exists is defined by what we are exposed to, if what we create is controlled not just by individual decision making, but by the goals of a few people at the tops of the largest corporations on earth, then we must be very careful. I'm glad to exist. I don't think that I do any harm, but that's certainly not always the case with collective ideas. Nothing exists. Sorry, that's not what I meant to say. If nothing exists, but thinking makes it so, then we must be very careful who we let control our thinking. Thank you. I'm Left Shark, and this has been a whole lot of fun. And now I would like to introduce the next person in our little thing here, and I'm not entirely sure how to do it. Oh, good. I'm back. Great. Excellent. It worked. The next part of our show, which is my friend, now he's my friend because we've done 2 shows in a row together, is David Sikabwe.
Hi.
Hi.
On the screen. Yeah, cool. Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. I really liked your philosophical musings. I didn't expect to get any wisdom from a shark, but that's great.
Well, I've had a lot of time to think about it.
Excellent.
Nobody's really been asking me about my thoughts, so I've kind of been alone with them. They mostly just want me to do this. It's kind of what I'm known for.
Just make you one thing.
Yeah. They're like, oh, that's the guy who did the Fly Me to the Moon cover. And that's all you ever get to be.
Right. And that's the guy who danced next to Katy Perry. And that's all you get to be.
That's right. I just do this and get weird pieces of thread stuck in my mouth. Anyway, David, I wanted to hear you play some of your music. And I know that Hank and John wanted that as well.
Well, excellent. I think I can deliver on that.
All right. I'm going to go play a few songs for us.
All right. Hi, friends. Hopefully everything sounds okay. As you can see, I have the best recording and broadcasting equipment money can buy. My money, at least. Anyway, my name's David Sakaway. I'm with the band Going Spaceward. Going Spaceward is a band comprised of only me. And I'm gonna play some songs for you in honor of well, this first one is in honor of quarantine. I wrote it around when things started to lock down in about like a day. It's available now on Spotify. If you search up Going Spaceward, you'll find it. This song's called Quarantine With Me. You can put your hand in mine once you've washed it for the recommended 20 seconds time. We should listen to the CDC. Do you want to quarantine with me? You and me in bed alone. I'll go beneath the covers and pretend like I am the Dow Jones. The government should give us tests for free. Yeah. Do you want to quarantine with me? We can shut the world outside. It's crazy times. Let's stay and hide and keep our social distance. We can stock our fridge with food. The smell of Lysol sets the mood. I wouldn't want to miss this. After 14 days are done, we'll walk outside and breathe fresh air and lie beneath the golden sun. For now, let's lock the door and toss the key. Yeah. Do you want to quarantine with me? 3's a risk, but 2 is company. Do you want to quarantine with me? Aha. I'm just going to imagine applause happening. I don't have the chat open at all, so like I'm getting zero feedback here, but I hope you like that. Okay, so second song, I played a different one at this point, but if I just play the same songs all this week, I might go crazy. So I'm gonna do something different for this one. This song's called Dream a Little Dream. Okay. Stars shining bright above you. whisper, I love you. Birds singing in the sycamore tree. Dream a little dream of me. Say nighty night and kiss me. Just hold me tight and tell me you miss me. While I'm alone and blue as can be. Dream a little dream of me. Stars fading, but I linger on, dear. Still craving your kiss. I'm longing to linger till dawn, dear. Just saying this. Sweet dreams till sunbeams find you. Sweet dreams to leave your worries behind you. But in your dreams, whatever they be, dream a little dream of me. Stars fading, but I linger on, dear. Still craving your kiss. I'm longing to linger till dawn, dear. Just saying this. Sweet dreams till sunbeams find you. Sweet dreams to leave your worries behind you. But in your dreams, whatever they be, dream a little dream of me. Gotta say that song plays a lot better when it's like nighttime, but it's like it's sunny and everything. I hope the mood wasn't totally ruined. We're out here. We're having a great time. I hope you all are having a great time in these crazy, crazy times. And I hope you all enjoy my musical stylings. For my last song, I'm gonna do a song that I actually wrote about an absolutely remarkable thing by New York Times #1 best-selling artist, author Hank Green. This song is it's sort of a musical version of the first couple of chapters of the book. The song's called Remarkable. I am at the 23rd Street Chipotle, and there's someone that I'd like you to meet. He's wearing armor, he's warm to the touch, and he stands 9, maybe 10 feet. I think that he's remarkable. I came upon him walking home from a job that I thought would be a lot more fun. 16 hours pushing pixels on screens, and I barely get a job well done. I know that I'm remarkable. Now I don't know who made him, but I know a thing or two about wanting some acknowledgement when I made something new. I know the feeling when a creation you adore, and the blood and sweat you poured go unnoticed and ignored. Is there anyone out there, anyone watching what I do? way. You don't see that every day in this beautiful town. It's all just so remarkable. Things like this, they come along and they blow us all away. Then before you can blink, everybody's moving on to the next new perfect and remarkable thing. It's easy to feel jaded and it's easy to feel lost. There's a million awesome things, so what's the middle and one? But take a moment, look at what people can create. Something different, something great. Can we just appreciate? Is there anyone out there? Anyone watching what we do? Does someone have a clue? Or if someone only knew that people are remarkable? We reach into the dark and pull the greatest piece of art that you'll ever see. Look at the function, look at the form, look at the way that he strays from the norm. Look how he stands as tall as the stars. Can't you just feel how small we all are? Maybe we'll never figure him out. Maybe the question is what it's about. People convening to find a meaning together somehow. Is there anyone out there? Anyone watching what we do? Does someone have a clue? It was someone only knew.
Thank you, David. Hello. How?
Yikes! Dang, where did Left Shark go? I'm scared.
Just don't worry about it. You'll see Lefty over in the green room when you go back to where all the pizza is. Emily says you're getting infinite clap emojis in the chat. And
I do love clap emojis. Thank you.
That's what we have. That's what we have these days. I mean, it would be. I feel like it would be a fairly easy transition to have an application that turns the clap emoji into the clapping sound, because it would be nice to have that feedback. It does. I do miss it.
I'm creating that app right now. Thank you for the idea.
You do. I mean, you do have this. You do have the skills and also the the knowledge of what it's like to perform publicly. Not there aren't that many people with CS degrees who also are professional performers. Certainly plenty, but it's definitely a smaller subset than either of those two. That's right. I wanted to ask you a question that I didn't ask you last night, which is why, like, as a person who's looking for like has a fairly traditional degree, computer science degree. What draws you to make stuff? What sort of like pulls you into that part of the internet where you're like tossing stuff out there and waiting to see what people think of it?
I like to show off.
Yeah, well, it's just like it's attention, I guess, right? It's like just like me.
I guess so, but like also like this is like the one thing I'm good at. But I started putting things into on the internet just like for no other reason than to like, I like music and I like listening to music, and then I'm like, I know how to make pretty good music, and here you go. Here's a thing I made.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, and I mean, like, it's clear that you didn't just like pop out of the womb able to perform the way that you do. And so like I'm like a lot of work went into building your skill there. I think that songwriting to some extent is a skill and that can be developed, but it's also pretty, it's I think also a lot. It's one of those things like dancing where it seems like there is something that you sort of, it's hard to build, but like guitar playing is not that way. Like the only way to get good at playing guitar is to play guitar a bunch. So you've clearly invested a lot of time in that.
For me, it's like I just like most people are listening to music like most of the time. I just kind of am a bit of a nerd about like the structure of songs, like okay, verse, chorus, bridge, AABA, the kind of like nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah.
So just like every song I listen to is just like going through the machine, and like I'm learning every song I listen to. I'm seeing in the chat that we are also getting the question of where folks can get the Absolutely Remarkable Thing song. Listen to it again. I'll put it out eventually. Don't rush me. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, man. I mean, I wrote a whole book. Yeah, it is good. You should release it. I am looking forward to it. I find myself singing it as soon as I'm off camera after these things. It's very catchy,
that compliment
very pretty,
for at least a
and
month.
it's also got I love a surprise rhyme, and it's got some nice surprise rhymes in it.
That remarkable dark and pole rhyme was like, it sprang forth fully formed from my mind, and I was like,
it's
I
so
can't
weird
top
when
this.
that happens.
I'll never write anything this good again.
That's what you think. I think that all the time, where I'm like, well, I guess I'm done, but then some other clever shit pops out. Yes. So, but if you could find David's other music, if you look for him at Going Spaceward, like Toward Space, on YouTube, on Spotify, and he's got lots of good stuff. You probably even maybe heard it if you're on Twitter a bunch, because it's always popping up on Twitter. And so do you like performing and like the sort of the relationship building with an audience enough that you think about that being a substantial part of your career going forward?
Oh, absolutely not. No,
you don't.
I mean, like I do like putting things out in the world and stuff. But I don't know. Sometimes the whole, there's something like you touched on this in AART. Like there's something about making you a brand that can be kind of terrifying.
No, absolutely. And I think that the interest, the request from the world is for that to be a very simple thing, which is not like what humans are.
Exactly.
And that, yeah.
But
I don't want to hold you back with my fiction from making stuff. I want you to make stuff.
I will never not be making stuff.
Okay.
So, but yeah, there is that kind of like, what's the word? That tug of war between like my stuff, like the thing I put out, and please put me on a pedestal and make fan cams of me, which
I had my first fan cam made of me in the last like month, and I was like, all right, there's that. I think that's a little off, but like people, it is, I think, at least a little ironic. At least that's how I read it. Because I am no K-pop star. Well, David, thank you. And I will go ahead and make my own fan cam of you, but I won't share it though. It'll just be for my group chats.
I'm glad. I do want to see that.
All right, David, thank you so much for gracing us with your voice and your music. And I will see you tomorrow, and everyone else can see you at Going Spaceward on YouTube and Spotify. Goodbye.
Bye.
Hello, Hank.
Hello, John.
David was so impressive, and perhaps the most impressive thing about him is the notion that he will not be like a moth that flies entirely towards the light of fame.
Yeah.
But yeah,
like this is, I'm creating a generation of people who are like that. This is my hope. My ultimate goal is that there will be a bunch of people who will be like, I'm going to be more careful about that. And it has to happen one way or another. It's just like,
yeah, we'll see. I like the fact that you think that you're creating that generation, though.
That's what I'm doing. It's just me. It's all me.
Play, Hank Green, molder of generations. But yeah, that was really great. Again, you can find David's music at Going Spaceward. All of his songs are great. I mean, just an absolute joy. And we're very lucky that he was here with us. Hank, how are you doing?
I'm good, John. I'm a little warm, and I've had more caffeine than usual. So, you know, I was recently wearing a much heavier outfit, and I just went down to a t-shirt just because I got a little hot.
That's great.
So,
by the way, I would like to state for the record that I don't know what a fan cam is, and so hearing your discussion of it and trying to piece together what it might be from context clues was a very interesting challenge. And I don't want you to tell me. I want it to live in my mind as the thing that I think it might be.
Yeah, I'm probably pretty close.
A lot of people, by the way, in chat are also saying what the F is fan cam. So it's nice to know.
How are you seeing the chat? I don't know how to find it. I guess I'll keep.
None of your business.
Okay.
I'm getting all of my questions from the chat, and so I don't want you to be spoiled with the chat's questions. If you have questions for Hank, you can leave them in chat, and I'll answer some of them, or Hank will answer some of them, but I'll ask some of them. So it was very interesting to hear from Left Shark. I really hope Left Shark makes a Vlogbrothers video at some point, because first off, I think that mix of Descartes and Shakespeare is so good. It's like, it's so good, Hank. It's so good. It's so good, I might steal it.
Well, you have to talk to Left Shark about that, not me.
Yeah, I'll consult with Left Shark about that. But anyway, I look forward to Left Shark's inevitable Vlogbrothers video. But hearing Left Shark speak about how things are created in the 21st century, this has always been true to some extent, right? Like that in a way, all creation has always been collaborative. Nothing has ever been created solely by individuals, like living in a vacuum. But now, like with the emergence of Left Shark or Gary Busey Family Photo or SpongeBob Meme, or whatever, we are cognizant of how deeply collaborative most of the most interesting creations of the 21st century are. And in this novel especially, you explore that. You explore the ways that collaboration functions and falls apart, and the ways that the internet both facilitates that kind of deep, productive collaboration and the kind of dangers that come along with it. And one of the ways that we see that in the form of the novel, and this is not a spoiler, is that it's told from multiple points of view. And so I wonder if we could begin by you talking about how you came to that idea in the first place.
Well, I mean, one of the, there was a certain part of me that wanted to flex different muscles and try new things, and also like prove that I could do it a different way. So there was that element of it, but I don't think that would have like carried me through, because it was really hard if there hadn't been like other reasons to be doing it. The characters get to decide early on and like say out loud, like, we have decided to tell this story together because we don't trust any individual one of us to do that. And I think that's a lot of self-awareness that they're like sort of like, you know, and that is basically written, even though you're reading it in the beginning of the book, it's written as if you know that it has happened. Like they're talking about this having already written the book. But you know, but then ultimately, like I also wanted them to break apart, because we do that so much now, where we sort of find we find ourselves believing the individualist myth and not wanting to bother other people with our problems, and thinking that we can do it on our own, And I wanted them to go off and try that so that they could find their own weakness in their solitude, so that they could find their strength in being together, which I like is one of the themes that I like is not something that I feel like is a theme of this book, because it's a theme of both the books that I've written, but it's also a theme of like a lot of the videos that I've made, and also of my own like anchors in terms of my personal philosophy. So I don't think that I would ever like write a book where that wasn't a theme, because I think that it's so important.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really liked about this book, like rereading it now, because I read it right before the lockdown started for the first time, and then I reread it, like a week ago when 100 days had passed, but also 17 lifetimes. And I noticed much more how the characters kind of work together, or work hard to not be isolated even when they are isolated, like the idea of being together, deeply meaningfully together, even when you are living in social isolation, is of course like a hyper contemporary problem.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like you correctly, like you saw that that was a problem before this started. It's not like COVID created that issue. It pre-existed it.
Yeah, I think that we one of the things I wanted to talk about in this book was isolation, and I think that that's like a 50-year problem, and it's just like a clear trajectory of more lonely people.
Right.
And I really do think that part of this is how we imagine meaning in a life well lived. And, I'm a big advocate for more people being able to be professional creators and to have control of the work that they create, and to not, and like, more people being able to do that means that like, instead of having a few superstars, which, and the process of like fracturing from like the 1950s style stars where there were not very few people to now has been a trajectory of a long time. But I think that like as this job has actually become achievable to more people, it like the job of being somebody who has an audience, whatever that is, whether it's sports or politician or internet creator, it just seems like it seems more attainable, and it also seems really valuable. And so a lot, and like, but then if you're only looking at these people and only sort of seeing their way of living in the world as the valuable way, it can make all the other ways seem like devalued. And I worry a lot about the sort of deficit in appreciation and gratefulness, and also like appreciation in both ways, where like the appreciation that we receive, where like, I don't have a deficit of that, I get a surplus. But I think in general, overall in society, the average person receives less due to this sort of commodification of labor, and I got and like it's sort of like making everything into a cog in order to fulfill sort of economic goals.
But even celebrities, even celebrity is a form of that cog, right? Like, it doesn't really matter who's filling, which particular individual is fulfilling the role of this celebrity or that celebrity, because the moment that person dies or loses their audience or whatever, like someone else goes into that role.
Mm-hmm. And people, because I think ultimately a lot of people recognize that this job that we have is less about making money and more about gathering attention, that like people don't even really, like people are always waiting to take that on, even if they're not going to make a ton of money doing it. But I do think that like, the amount of time we spend appreciating other people and the amount of appreciation that the average person gets, both of those things are going down, and that is like leading to a searching for meaning that that I think ultimately has been bad for communication and community and connection.
Yeah. Another theme in the book on that topic is the search for meaning, and how difficult life can be in this sort of secular 21st century
Mm-hmm.
side of the world where, you know, a lot of people feel like there is not an organizing principle to their lives, or feel like there isn't a, you know, they don't wake up in the morning feeling like they know exactly why they are here, and why they have been gifted with consciousness and so on. And that, you know, that's something that you've talked about a lot in the last couple of years, and I felt like kind of wove its way through each storyline in this book, is that when we don't feel a sense of meaning and we don't feel a sense of purpose, it can be extremely disorienting and destabilizing. And like when we do feel a sense of meaning and purpose, we can do all kinds of things that would be impossible if we didn't.
Right, and I think we search for meaning in when we don't like, we need it, and so we try and find it in places. And one thing that I worry about is people searching for meaning and finding it in othering people and attacking, and like and like finding ways to feel threatened, and then to respond to that threat is a source of meaning.
Right. I mean,
that seems really common right now.
Yeah, and that's also a historically prominent way of establishing meaning, right? Like the meaning of my life is that I am affiliated with this group or this nationality, which is opposed to that group or that nationality or that.
Right, and yeah, you find that during times of war, there is less of a problem finding sources of meaning, because it's like, well, we need our national identity right now to solidify in order to oppose this external threat.
I think it somewhat depends on the war, but
probably.
Yeah, like, I feel like in World War I, there were a lot of soldiers who were like, why are we doing this?
See, I don't even know I was part of a country. Yeah.
Right. So you're telling me that I'm bohemian.
I hadn't heard, but okay, I guess I'll kill people,
right.
And die. Yeah. But one of the characters, so Andy is in many ways the person in the book who is most similar to me. Andy's a third generation atheist, which is not true of me. And so like really doesn't have any affiliation at all to sort of like the traditional structures of meaning and sort of understanding your place in the world. So he's very humanist, but he finds himself like trying every single way to matter. And like he hangs out with cool famous people. He makes money. He tries to be influential and change the world. He tries to help people. So he tries everything, and so he, in a way, becomes an expert on how to on the paths to finding meaning as a fairly young person. And I think that makes him fairly wise, though he's still quite stupid in some ways. And I think it's nice to have a 24, 25-year-old character to speak through in these things, because these are things that I as like a 40-year-old would never say, because I recognize that like I'm not getting to the root of all of this, and that these are questions that philosophers have been struggling with for hundreds of years. So I'm not gonna like come up with new ideas. But Andy, as like a sort of egotistical 24-year-old white guy, is like, I have ideas and I bet they're great. Right. And so it lets me say those things. I hope I didn't ruin anything in the book there for people, but
no, but I like the fact
I do think that he comes to good and wise conclusions, even if they are not complete ones.
Yeah, and you're able to like laugh both with and at Andy at times.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. I want to ask a few questions from the chat. This question is from Mira, which I thought was really interesting. When writing A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor, did you ever find yourself wishing you had written certain parts of an absolutely remarkable thing differently?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I feel like when a book is done, and so and it's really nice to have like solid parts of your story that you can't change, because if you can change everything, then there's no structure, and you might find yourself being like, oh, I'm just going to start over again. So like knowing that there was some solid stuff was really helpful, actually, because it gave me a framework to work inside of, and I had to be creative inside that framework, but I can't change it. But there was like one word in the epilogue of An Absolute Remarkable Thing that like made my life miserable for months. So, and it's basically a timeline thing where like I had to stick to, and I don't know what, like, why did anyone let me end a book that was definitely going to have a sequel with like a clear time, like any word that was a specific number of months.
Right.
I did it. I made it work, and it worked. And like, I worked inside of the framework, and I'm really happy with how it turned out, but like, it was not easy, and it would have been much easier if I could have just been like, instead of this many, it's going to be this many or whatever.
Right. You could have been like much later, comma.
Yeah. Some time passed, some amount of time, just to give myself the flexibility, you know, but like instead of that, it was sort of like, well, this is what reality is. And so like, what's the story? What's the story that fits with reality? And so, you know, that's the really interesting thing about storytelling, where when you like have to exist inside of the reality of the story, even though it is made up reality, because everything's made up reality. John, nothing is real, but thinking makes it so.
Yeah, I mean, a few things are real outside of thinking, but not very many, and they don't tend to be very important.
Yeah, I mean, yes, they're like climate change, for example, is real and important.
Right. Yeah,
it's not an idea.
Way out of it.
Yeah.
And that one probably is fairly important. We got a number of questions. I mean, we're laughing. There have been a number of people who've asked about because you write about, like, you write in an alternate world, obviously, but you also write about now. Like, you write about what now feels like, and I've never come across a story that portrays what now feels like as clearly to me as these two books do. When you're writing, do you think about writing for the future? Like, do you think about being read in 50 years, or do you think about being read a month after the book comes out?
I just made a TikTok about this that I haven't released yet.
Well, I haven't seen your, I'm so excited to see.
It's not out. But yeah, I mean, so like the idea is like, every time, like, nobody reads a book twice. Like, the same person never reads a book twice, because the next time you read it, you're a different person.
Right.
And you read it differently, and you've had different experiences. And like, so like, not only do you have to interface with the fact that that your book will be read differently by every person who reads it to some extent, you also have to interface with the fact that like the overall like a bell curve of experiences of the book are going to shift over time.
Right.
And yes, I do think about that. And it is a source of great anxiety to me. And so I think that like,
I always feel like my books, and your books are different, obviously, but I always feel like my books are like fossils frozen in amber or something, you know, like, this is
like, please recognize that this book was written in a year. Yeah.
This is a historical document starting the day after it's published, right? Like, this is a record of January 10th, 2012, not of January 14th, 2012. And I think that like trying to write for the future is very, very difficult, and and usually sort of foolhardy. But there are, of course, exceptions, and those tend to be the exceptions that we read like for hundreds of years. So if you're going to swing for the fences, by all means do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really hard to do with a work that is definitely contemporary and very rooted in how we are communicating at this very moment, which I think will change. Yeah. You know, like Twitter is going to have to change, if only because of its business model. Like, Twitter continues to make no money, and it's been this way for years. And like, at some point, Twitter will have to either die or it will have to substantially change so that it sucks less or something. And and so when that happens, like, the book will be a very clear, like, oh, this took place, even though, like, of course, in an alternate universe, but this took place in 2018, 2019, 2020.
Yeah, but I think like that makes it useful. Like that makes it useful
Yeah.
to the future in a way, or I hope it does anyway.
Yeah,
That,
absolutely.
you know, it's the historicalness of it that makes it useful. Like when I read, I've been reading a lot of books from the 1930s, and none of them feel like they could be written tomorrow, but they're still interesting.
Right. Yeah,
We have
yeah.
another question. This one is from Sky, who asks, do you edit each other's novels?
No.
No.
John gave me a couple of pieces of feedback that I used and a couple I didn't. So that's certainly not editing, but like some good thoughts that were helpful.
Yeah, I suggested some cuts, most of which were cut.
Yeah.
But most of them were going to get cut anyway. I don't like labor under the delusion that I did that.
Yeah.
Like a lot of them were literally repetitions, so they were definitely cut.
Yeah, well, yeah, that was not editing. That was copy editing. Yeah,
Right.
like this book was convoluted to create because of the multiple storylines, and so there, even up to really close to publication, we were still finding things that were basically things that I wrote twice, because yeah, which was nerve-wracking. But I think that we got all of them out.
There's another question from chat from Melody, who asks, how do you navigate parasocial relationships, and did writing a book change the way that you think about them? I mean, this is really like, in a lot of ways, this phrase parasocial relationship did not exist, at least in my world, for the first like 12 years that we made YouTube videos.
Yeah, it did exist, but it was very in academia. Yeah.
Right. So I wasn't aware of it, I guess.
Yeah.
But it is a helpful construct to me to understand the sort of the nature of a creator fan relationship and that's something that you do write a lot about in both of these books.
Yeah, I don't know. There's both sides, and I'm on both sides of parasocial relationships. And but one thing that I do have that is somewhat unusual is I have had parasocial relationships with people who then became actual like regular social relationships.
Right.
And that's happened to me enough times that at this point my parasocial relationships are like different than they used to be, because I sort of recognize that they may at some point become social relationships. Not always, but like, yeah, I mean, I don't like consume that much media. I don't become fans of that many things. And most of the stuff I become fans of is pretty niche. So like that. Yeah.
For me, it's mostly really good classic Tetris players.
Yeah. And you could see yourself maybe one day meeting those people.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think
but basically so could anybody in that community. Yeah.
But that's one of the things that I really enjoy about A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor is like, there isn't a ton of fiction that explores that stuff with a lot of nuance and complexity and kind of throws a bunch of different scenarios, a bunch of different ways of interacting with people online and offline into one novel. So it's something I really
yeah. I mean, it's that my knowledge of being on both sides of that is you know, the kind of the whole reason that, like, not the reason I wrote An Absolutely Remarkable Thing, but like the reason I was able to, and the well of experience that allowed me to feel like I was bringing something useful to the table, useful enough for me to you know, dedicate a lot of time to writing it.
Yeah. So before we have some people from the live stream actually come into our Zoom call and ask questions in person, insofar as that exists in contemporary life, I want to ask you one last question, which is that on the subject of writing about young people or people at that time of life, this book is so much about friendship, and it's so much about how intense and magical and heartbreaking and deep the friendships that we form in early adulthood can be. And part of what I love about both of these worlds is that I haven't read that much stuff about what it's like to be between, you know, like 22 and 27. And it's such a interesting, terrible, wondrous, you know, big time of life, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why did you want to write about characters that age entering?
Yeah, I think it's partially because I hadn't seen it that much. And I do remember, like, I look back on that time in my life as one of the most fun, awful, exciting, like anxious times of my life, where I was not making a good living, but I had really strong friend groups, but also a lot of my relationships were tumultuous and
a lot of uncertainty.
Lots of uncertainty, economic uncertainty, relationship uncertainty. Like, I was not married, but I was like not sure if we were gonna get married, and I had moved to a new town, and it was just like it was wild. And I was like, and a lot, like, those friendships that I have then are still the biggest friendships in my life. I hadn't seen a lot written about that time of life, but also like there was practical reasons where I just like I wanted these people to be that age because it worked for the story well, that they were taking these risks, but also that they were being taken relatively seriously.
Right.
Because like I think if you're younger than that, it's very hard to be taken seriously by like society at large. Though certainly they still struggle with that, and I think that people in their early mid-20s struggle a lot with being taken seriously. But they also were fairly self-aware, and that's something that can come earlier, but often does not. So I felt like it made the most sense for them to be the age that they are, so that they would be, you know, adventurous, like immature in some ways, and like foolish in some ways, but you know, like but also like just that mix between maturity and immaturity, where you are really thoughtful, but still you like make these decisions that are very clearly not in your own best interest.
Yeah, and another thing about that period of life that I was thinking about when rereading the book is that even now I look back on those years and every month feels like it lasted for years. Like they were all so big. Like in like a period of 6 months, I lived in like 3 different apartments, and I could perfect diagrams of all 3 apartments, you know, and who was living where, and who was dating who, and who was breaking up with who. And it made me remember this. Like I remember at one point, like we were living, like Hassan and Katie and Shannon and I were living in an apartment, and I'd gone on like 2 or 3 dates with someone, and Shannon and Hassan were like, we don't like them. And I was like, well, I guess it's not going to move.
Yeah.
Because those were the foundational relationships. And I loved that so much. Like I loved being brought back to that feeling, having those like intense foundational friendships, and that there are all kinds of different love that can sustain us, you know, that can hold us together in those really, really difficult times. So with that noted, we're going to welcome in Maya from Israel to ask a question first. If Maya here. Hello, Maya.
Hey.
Hello.
How's it going?
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So I wanted to ask you about your writing process. Was the writing process of this book more stressful than the writing process of the first book, because of people already expected things from you? Or was it less stressful because writing a book was something that you've done before?
So it was more stressful, Maya. and it's interesting because like some of the really hard work and the hardest parts of writing An Absolute Remarkable Thing had been done. Like the hardest parts were getting to know the characters, really like believing in them, understanding them. And so that, and I anticipated like this will be easier because that work has been done. And it's true that it was easier than if I hadn't already done that work. So I was glad to have done that. But the timeline and less expectations, but more like sort of an obligation that like, I want to have this book come out in less than 2 years because I don't want people to have to wait too long. I've set it up very intentionally so that this is a 2-book arc, and I don't want to let all of the other stuff that I do have to do, which are also important obligations, get in the way of that. And so that meant that I had to push myself harder than I am comfortable with at times, and also maybe. Yeah. So yes. So that was and that there were times when I felt like I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this or if I'm going to live up to that obligation, and so like that was scary. But I had a lot of help in terms of, and like very gentle help in terms of deadlines being set by my editor and my publisher, and I got there, and like you don't like it. It's very hard to know how long it's going to take to write a book because I don't even know. I didn't know how long it was going to be. Like I didn't know how many words it was going to be until like I was very close to the end, and so there was a lot of unknowns and a lot of worry. I knew roughly how it was going to end, and of course I rewrote the entire end several times, but like getting through that and like having a whole story was just a huge release of stress. And even today, like having the book come out was a huge release of stress to know that like I did this. I did it. I fulfilled the obligation. So yes, it was definitely more stressful, but like I think that it was very, very worth it.
Thank you.
That's really
thank you,
Maya. My experience has been different, which is that I have never experienced anything like the pressure that I felt when writing my first novel when I didn't know if it would ever be published. Like, and having to work at night and on the weekends. And I found that much more stressful, even than, future I did find stressful. But yeah, for me, like having the security of knowing that like the book will come out or like that somebody will want to publish it is
and I've not had to worry about that. Like it wasn't about whether or not someone would publish my book, because I've seen some books by YouTubers get published.
There's been some bad YouTuber books, I think it's safe to say.
Yeah. So
there's also been some great.
For clarity, I didn't want to publish a bad YouTuber book. And it was funny because when I first reached out to Maya, or when I first reached out to Jody, my agent, I was like, do you think I could sell a book? And she was like, well, like, I don't know. Is it good? And I was like, right. I guess that's important. And she would not tell me, she would really not like, I sent her like half a book and she was like, this is worth keeping writing. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to finish. I have to write this whole book. And she's like, yes. Yeah. Which was really great. I'm so glad that she did that and wasn't like, we've got a half a book that we're going to pitch around and like made me finish it before we pitched it. Yeah. But like the feedback I got from her was that this was a saleable book. So I wasn't worried about that.
Right. Yeah. It's just, it's just, different experiences. We have another question from Kelsey, who lives, I believe, Hank, in our hometown of Orlando, Florida. Kelsey, are you there? Hi, Kelsey.
Hi, guys.
Hello. Where in Orlando are you?
I'm in Lake Mary.
Oh, cool.
Cool. How's Lake Mary these days?
It is good. Quiet, but good.
Yeah, good. That's probably the right way for it to be.
I feel like in July of 2020, places should be fairly quiet.
Yeah.
Did you have a question for us?
Yeah, so Hank, you've mentioned in the past that A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor is written from multiple different perspectives. So which perspective was your favorite to write from, and which one was like the hardest for you to write from?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think it's a spoiler. I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say that there are 5 point of view characters, um, which is a lot. And it was more than I was kind of expecting initially. Uh, and they were all hard at different times and in their own ways. So like some chapters from all of them were easy and some chapters from all of them were harder than usual. I think that like clearly the hardest thing to do and the sort of like the character who's most different from me is Maya, both that she's a Black female, who, like, which is pretty different from my own personal experiences, but also she's just different from me. Like she is more like she's more thoughtful than I am. She's more careful than I am. You know, and so like that was the nice thing is that I had help with that. Um, and if you are able to, as a writer, to have conversations with people who have the perspective of of your characters, like closer perspective than you do of aspects of their identity, it's so valuable. And also some of the best conversations I've ever had in my life, because they're complicated and you have to be, and they're being really thoughtful and careful and like trying to, you know, and like interfacing with stuff that we don't generally get a chance to talk about. So that was extremely valuable to have that insight from my perspective editors. And so my was hard at times. Miranda was really fun because her story is really fun. She sort of like has really like a real sort of like robust adventure. Andy was hard to write in that I couldn't shut up because he's most like me. And so I just wanted to like gush about like whatever I was thinking about, because I felt like he was a good vector through which I could rant about something. And so Andy's chapters had by far the most cuts because I was being a loudmouthed, white guy through his loudmouthed white guy self. So they were all hard in their own ways. And but I also wrote some chapters from the perspective of Carl, which is a real thing, a whole thing, really fun, but not easy, not to try and get into that mindset. And I talked to several science fiction authors about how they have written non-human characters, and that was really helpful too, because you don't have a perspective editor in that sense. Like you don't have somebody who has that experience. So it's really it's freeing and fun, but also too much power to give to one person to try and encapsulate the perspective of one person. So I'm sorry that was not a concise answer, but
also I'm a little worried about the spoilers, but there's no going back.
There's no going back. All right. Yeah.
Kelsey, thank you very much for your question.
Thank you, guys.
Being here. I don't think it's too much of a spoiler, but I might have like not named them just for future reference.
Okay.
And so we're going to bring up our third question asker shortly, but I should say where you can get this book. You can get it wherever books are sold. But if you go into the doobly-doo or the video info here in the YouTube live chat, you'll see links to 3 bookstores, 3 independent bookstores where we were going to have events, where there would have been live events had the tour not been canceled. So if you want to support those bookstores, that would be really wonderful, especially if they're local to you. Old Firehouse Books or Left Bank Books or Gibson's Bookstore, all great stores. Or you can go to bookshop.org, which is a great way to support your local bookstore. Just go to bookshop.org and search for A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor. That's been a really fast growing way of supporting local bookstores. Right now, local bookstores, of course, need our support really desperately. So yeah, check that out. And thanks again to everybody for being here. We're going to bring up our last question asker, Abby from Connecticut, if Abby is around. Hi, Abby.
Hi, Abby.
Hi. So my question is, what is the most important takeaway from a beautifully foolish endeavor, and how could we like translate that into life today?
Thank you. I think that what I was ultimately going for with this one was like, first story is more about like personal experience with social media. Second one's more about like societal experience. And I thought a lot about that in both books, that second thing, but talked about it much more clearly, and also imagined maybe what it's going to be like in 5, 10, 15 years instead of what it's like right now. And I think that the big thing, you know, that to take away from that is one, to just even if we can do nothing about it, to recognize the amount of power that these platforms have over society, not just us as individuals, but everyone. And like, they talk about how much power they have because they're proud of it, because that's their business model, is to sell that to advertisers. And that's you know, it's you know, if it's getting me to buy a mattress, that's fine. But if it's like trying to control the overall mood of a country, that's a little bit more dystopian. So that is a thing that I think that we as citizens of the world need to be concerned about and aware of. I don't know what to do about it. Like, there are ways that we can put pressure on these platforms, and I am trying to write an op-ed about this right now. There's employees internally have put pressure on them, and that has been effective because it is hard to hire for those companies. Like, they need talent, and so like that is a pressure. We've also seen recently Facebook getting a lot of advertising boycotts. Like, literally, Dutton was like, we're not advertising on Facebook, so we're gonna shift your spending. And I was like, have at it, for the marketing of this book. So there's that, and then there's government, of course, government regulation, which I think should absolutely be done. And I think that, you know, we need to be a lot more serious about antitrust in this country than we are being. And then there's like us as users and creators. Like, how do we choose to interact with the platform, and how do we sort of like use the power that we have as the ultimate source of value, even though it's a very hard one to organize, to respond when we feel that they are taking advantage of the amount of power that they have. So those are all things that, like, you know, I think that we will see more of in the next 10 years, you know, as these platforms continue to influence their power. But like, mostly I just want us to understand that we are citizens of these platforms, and that we need to act that way, whether that's you know, helping to like create norms and taboos where we decide how we're going to use them, and what are the destructive ways to use them, or whether that is like treating them like our governments and trying to find the levers that we can pull, since we can't vote for Mark Zuckerberg, the levers that we can pull to try and influence them in whatever ways we can, which is a little scary if you like actually imagine them as a place where we live in a government that we have that is entirely authoritarian and capitalistic. But there it is. We've arrived at the dystopia that all of the books of my youth thought we would arrive at. Thank you, Abby.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Also, great background.
Oh,
yeah, you really set yourself up there in a nice spot.
Very cool. I'm kind of jealous. All right, take care,
Yeah.
Abby. Yeah, you know, on that front, I always think back to when we first started on making stuff on the internet, which was really in the late 1990s. You know, when we were kids, we were making websites, but we were mostly just making like individual posts. We were making conversations. We were, you know, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think at once we had this utopian vision for what the internet was going to be, that it was going to be a repository for all human information, that all humans would have equal access to, and that it would facilitate a more equal society and more equality of opportunity and broader rights. And then we also had this dystopian worry about what the internet might be, you know, that it might be this thing that hijacked our consciousness, or even eventually that we, uploaded our consciousness to, and that our entire lives or selves would take place inside of these virtual spaces that would be controlled by people who didn't have our best interests at heart. And I felt like when I was reading A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor, like you took those feelings that we had as kids in the 1990s and you played all of them out, but with all of the nuance and complexity that we didn't have as kids, like all of the nuanced way of looking at topics that we didn't bring to those days. And I just thought it was just a really beautiful exploration of what the internet can be, and also what we worry the internet, is becoming.
Yeah, and I think that there's this thought that if you're critical of something, that it means that you don't love it or that it's bad. And I think it's so important right now that we be critical of the internet, but also continue to use it to do all of the good things that it can do. Like, we obviously need it more now than ever. And also it has been a really effective tool for organizing and for knowledge building and sharing, and like all that stuff is true. And I think that, after June, we saw in a lot of ways that we, maybe hadn't been paying attention to, like how effective it can be for organizing and actually enacting some amount of change. So that's great. And but like, we do still need to be really critical of it. And there are things that I won't do that with, that I just want to love, but I recognize that doesn't mean that some other people can't be critical of it and shouldn't be. Like, but like, it's just the interface that I want to have with some pieces of media is that I just want to enjoy them and not think about them, but other ones I do. And so like, we all get to pick which things we be critical of and which we sort of like uncritically love. But I don't think that we at this point can uncritically love the internet, because it is too big and strong and nuanced. Right. And and not just one thing.
Right. It's more than one thing. And so you can't, I even like back in 2007, when we started making YouTube videos, we would sometimes talk about like internet people, and like, you can't do that anymore. All people are internet people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or not all people, but billions of people are internet people. And and everybody's internet is different, and we've got to acknowledge that. But together we do have extraordinary amounts of power, and consciousness is, I mean, to me, the real theme of both of your books is that consciousness is beautiful and stupid, both. Like, it's both and awful, and being able to live in that space and live with that reality that like it's both beautiful and foolish, and the beauty of it does not negate the foolishness of it, and the horror does not negate the beauty of it. So I hope everybody likes A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor as much as I have. Hank, do you have any last words for the for our audience tonight?
I am so happy after these years of working on it. I don't really know how I managed to do it, but I open up the book and I see the words, and I'm proud of them. I like them, but that was a lot of work for me, but it was also a lot of work for some other people. So thank you, especially to Maya, my editor, Maya Ziv, who has just done an amazing amount of work with me to make this a really great book, but also all of my perspective editors, who are amazing, and the PR people and marketing people, and Jody, my agent, who is always there advocating for me and being just a very strong personality in the room that we all need, because sometimes it's hard to advocate for yourself. And I feel really lucky, John. I think that I write books for people, And I think a lot about the people who are going to consume them. And I just feel really grateful to have the readership that I have, the number of people who are actually interested in it, but also those particular people, the ones who are in my readership, just like, it just seems like the best possible group of readers to have. Thoughtful people who are excited, also critical, and like think really great. The reviews that I've seen on Goodreads have made me think really hard about the book. And that's the biggest joy of this moment right now for me, is to like see how other people are interfacing with it and how it informs even how I think about the book.
Yeah, and if you want to talk about the book as you read it, that's great. There's the Nerdfighter subreddit. There's also a wonderful Discord channel called Fans of an Absolutely Remarkable Thing, the acronym of which is FART with two A's.
Two A's. Fart with two A's, yes.
FART with two A's. I believe it's FART is the way it's pronounced.
And yeah, and it is probable that people in the chat are linking to sources where you can find these things. I believe.
Right, we don't have the chat up. We can't see the chat right now, but probably that is the case. And we both feel very, very grateful that all of y'all are here with us tonight. We wish that this were happening in real life. We wish that real life were happening on a scale that it's not possible right now. This is such a lovely way to launch Hank's book. And Hank, congratulations on the book. It's really wonderful. I'm so excited for people to read it and for the discussions that it's going to bring about in our community and beyond, about the internet and about what we can accomplish together.
Thank you, John. And thank you everybody for hanging out.
And as they say in our home,